Hey guys, what's up? It's me, MC Matador here, and today I will be doing the long-awaited finale to my top 150 Coaster Countdown Calamity series, counting down entries 15 to 1. Now, I will say, I will get to more of the sentimental stuff at the end, but this series has been a year in the making through lots of procrastination, stubbornness to not upload the same part or the same series 2 episodes in a row, trying to keep the channel as diverse as I can, and just as well as general procrastination, because I'm really good at that. A lot's happened in my life since I've started this series, and today we're finally going to lay it to rest. Right towards the end of the 2019 season, I only have one more visit to Great America, just an amusement park in general, for the remainder of the calendar year. And I guess we'll just kind of lull into that. We'll get down started to number 15, Goliath, at my home park, Six Flags Great America. Now, number 16 in this list was Twisted Colossus, the first RMC to fall. My thoughts on that in the previous episode. This one's much closer to home, and I think I know this coaster more than every other one seen in the list yet. This thing I know at the back of my hand, and I know kind of when and how to ride it, if possible. And I always make sure to ride it, if possible. The drop in the back, especially with the really steep lift hill and the even steeper drop, is fantastic. Yanks you over it, and you pull some massive ejector airtime, even though airtime's not really the ride's focus. This thing was built in a very limited footprint that was occupied by the former Iron Wolf B&M stand-up coaster, which was a rather compact, short twister layout stand-up coaster. Um, Definitely want to say that this ride definitely consists of more inversions and turnarounds, even though the ride is also quite short because of limited footprint. But I do want to say that the inversions on here are probably two of my favorite inversions of all time. The dive loop is probably my favorite inversion of all time because that dive loop, you go up super high, get held up there for a while. It's even better in the cold weather, because you get held there for even longer, and you fall back down inside of yourself to just like basically to the ground level. Like, you're going under the supports, over the supports, and you're like under the station. You can see bits if you're looking closely enough. It's a fantastic element, followed immediately by the very large, long, and imposing, intimidating zero G stall. I mean, this zero G stall is so intimidating that one of my budding coaster enthusiast friends that I've known for a decade now refuses out of irrational fear to ride Goliath. He can do pretty much anything else in the park, including Max Force, Raging Bull, and all the other major steel coasters except for I think V2, because he just doesn't like that one. But this one he doesn't want to do because he's just actually legitimately scared of it. Um, and I remember my tastes have changed. Like, I think that I've come to love this ride more so than it did when 2 years ago. I've come to accept it and love the terms the way it is. I definitely prefer other RMCs, as you'll definitely see, but this one definitely has grown on me. My tastes have changed, and I've come to like it quite more. I will say the cons are still the same as day one: short ride length, poor operations, consistently drawing a large queue, though that's kind of dwindled because of the introduction of Max Force this year, which you will not see because this is a 2018 centric list. But yeah, Goliath is definitely a stalwart at my park. However, it is not my favorite. My favorite ride at the park is going to be coming right here with Raging Bull, the pride and joy in Chicago. I can never, ever, ever get enough of this thing. I will live everything to do this ride. I just live, breathe, and photosynthesize this ride. The drop in the back row is the single best drop on any coaster in this list. And contrary to popular opinion, the airtime does exist. Oh, and there's a lot of it if you're in the back row. This is a ride that coaster enthusiasts love to hate, but not all of them have ridden it, so a lot of the hate is unjustified. This thing is a criminally underrated B&M hyper, and it is by far from the far from the weakest hyper in existence, and probably isn't even the weakest B&M hyper in existence. Definitely one of the lower ones, but definitely not the worst. Just Great America has a lot of coasters. Try and come out here to Chicago, my great city, if you know how to avoid the wrong places, and just visit Great America, explore the area. There's a lot of life around here. I love the Chicago suburbs with all my heart. And I do want to mention this ride is so popular. Even 20 years later, this thing has its own freaking mascot, Billy the Bull, attached to it. Like, that just kind of emphasizes that this ride is super popular, that it has its own non-IP freaking mascot attached to it. Like, they're funneling that much to drive up PR for the ride. And this thing is excellent, popular, even 20 years old, and it's still as fun as the first ride every time. And this thing's also a people eater, so you never really have to wait more than like 30 minutes on the busiest, on like a busy summer day. It's crazy during Fright Fest if it's running, but wow, it's just on a good summer day. If you know when to visit, you're never gonna have to wait more than like 15, 20 minutes for this thing. 30 if you're on a weekend. It's pretty crazy, although I don't usually go on weekends anymore except for Fright Fest and Holiday in the Park. Oh, and I'm going to be looking forward to riding this thing again on my 19th birthday because Raging Bull's open for Holiday in the Park, which is awesome. Looking forward to doing that. Maybe do the Polar Coaster Challenge. That was recently announced. Who knows? Moving on, we have number 13, Mystic Timbers, the pinnacle GCI, their finest hour of labor. Simple, out and back layout provides world-class experience, the signature GCI breakneck pacing, and ejector airtime everywhere. The moment you are falling from the steeply banked drop, like that is simultaneously steep drop, bank drop, and just airtime filled drop, you're sent in a wild ride all the way into the wilderness, pulling forces from every direction. Up, down, left, right, into your face, outside, going out of your face, everything. And I wasn't really hyping this thing up back in 2017, since 2017 was a rather lackluster year for roller coasters in the States. But this thing blew all my expectations out of the water and firmly set GCI as one of my favorite manufacturers, and by far my favorite wooden coaster manufacturer. This is also firmly my second favorite ride at Kings Island, which I originally thought it'd be the third. I don't really like the shed, but because it just leaves a weird taste in my mouth after every ride. I kind of get it because it's better to be in the shed. It kills a few more seconds to be in the shed rather than just standing there on a transfer track or a brake run. I get that. But I still don't think it detracts from the experience. It just, the ride itself, the experience itself, barring the shed, even with the shed, is a truly fantastic roller coaster that I really want to see more of. It's a shame that in Illinois we don't have like any good wooden coasters. Viper and Eagle were obviously like 10 times, or not 10 times, but they were considerably worse than this thing, placing in the 80s and 90s positions. This is the best GCI in the mid. This is the best wooden coaster in the Midwest, probably. I love it, and I just hope that whenever I visit again in 2020 or later, that Orion helps to eat away all the queue and allows me to ride Mystic Timbers more. Not sure if that'll happen, but I hope it does. Number 12, Goliath at Six Flags Over Georgia. I definitely underrated this thing during my only ride back in 2015, and I've realized my errors since then. My faint recollection of this ride has helped me realize that this is a airtime machine as well as a serious positive G-force machine with that double helix over the parking lot, or over the drive into the parking lot. It's a fun, forceful layout that soars high above the pathways in the park, driveways, and into the land beyond. The airtime, like being a Hypers usually, is superb, and this thing is good in every row, unlike Raging Bull. And I really think that this thing is definitely going to be a front row ride. I really want to go back to Six Flags Over Georgia in the Atlanta area to ride this again, especially to also go ride Twisted Cyclone, which just opened up in, well, the same year that this list is tuned to. Technically, it just is wrapping up its second season now. And let me just say that I'm sorry, Goliath. You ranked 12th in last year's list, and now that there's basically, 37 more coasters? You're still 12th. That's honestly fantastic on your part. And I'm sorry. I wish I can come back and ride you just to see what the heck you've done, or why I've been so wrong. But that's not going to happen for a while. For the moment, you just sit here. But you're definitely an unproven commodity. Keep it up. Number 11 is Storm Runner, a highly sentimental ride that is probably the sole coaster that helped me overcome my fear of launch coasters. Basically, in 2015, I was able to ride pretty much every kind of coaster, except for strong launch coasters. Intimate accelerators, Premier Ride Spaghetti Bowls, Intimate Impulses. I was deathly afraid of those. But Storm Runner helped me overcome that fear with a thing called quality. The launch was genuinely fun. the layout was spectacular, which is something I couldn't say really about the spaghetti bowls and the impulse coasters. And it just this was the coaster that I also rode the most during my 2 days at Hershey Park. Managed to get several rides on both days due to the relatively low wait time. And this is my favorite ride at Hershey Park, at least for the moment. I haven't been there in almost 5 years running now, so I really got to get back, especially for Candemonium being up this year or next year. Yeah, this thing is awesome. And when I was there, they actually were using the hard over-the-shoulder restraints. A couple years ago, I remember if it was 1 or 2 years after I rode it, they swapped over to the soft over-the-shoulder restraints that you see on a lot of Intamin Blitz coasters nowadays, and it definitely, I can imagine that it gets rid of the minor neck jostling and shoulder pains that plagued the ride when it was first around. So I can imagine this ride has only gotten better since I've last ridden it. Of course, I talk mostly about the launch, but of course, the top hat, the flying snake dive especially, there's some fantastic and forceful elements all across the very short and adrenaline pumping ride experience. Speaking of Intamin accelerators, number 10 is Accelerator, my favorite coaster in the state of California. This was the first ever hydraulic launch back in, I think it was 2002 or 2003. I think it was 2002. The launch is probably the single most intense launch I'd ridden up to this point. It is a gut puncher. And going 0 to 82 in just over 2 seconds is something that seriously caught me off guard during my first ride. Having ridden another coaster you'll see later on the list, another launch coaster themed to fast cars, and as well as Storm Runner, I thought it'd be comparable to those launches, but it's even stronger than those two. The thing is a shame that the ops suck, the ride is unreliable, and those bank turns after the launch don't really do much for the ride. But the thing is really just the launch and the speed. Like, it definitely is a one-trick pony, but damn, that one trick is excellent. That launch, I just want to experience that again and again and again, especially on a dead day at Knott's Berry Farm. I love this thing. Moving on, we have number 9, Intimidator at Carowinds, not Intimidator 305 at King's Dominion. I have not visited King's Dominion. I have ridden Intimidator at Carowinds. And from here on out, I am not going to be using a percentile rank for unit placings. Basically, every ride from here on out, except for 2, where their position swapped from 2016, will be the exact same as their one from, 2016. And in regards to Intimidator, this thing is a fantastic floater airtime machine. I don't really like the excessive trims, but I do really like what this thing packs. The floater airtime is fantastic. It has a lot of it, and I really wish I could have ridden this thing in the front. It's not perfect, but it definitely is a high-class coaster that serves among the elite of my top 10. And it's probably going to be more of a gatekeeper role as things keep getting better and better as I ride more coasters. Number 8 is Top Thrill Dragster, the ultimate 20-second thrill time machine, or thrill machine. This thing has, of course, massive heights, incredible speeds, and a one-of-a-kind launch that prepares 20 seconds of 100% undiluted distilled or undiluted adrenaline and is re-rideable to the core. This thing is smooth, although it suffers from very inconsistent reliability, but whenever this thing is up and running, I always try and hop in line and ride it. You can hear this thing from all over the park, and it's a very glorious noise. This thing is fast, this thing is tall, and this thing is excellent. It's a one-of-a-kind coaster. And if I were to compare this to anything that thrill junkies do that are not coaster enthusiasts, this is the roller coaster equivalent of skydiving. This thing is just probably one of the scariest things you can ever do on a coaster. At least in a conventional coaster. This thing is very intimidating. This thing is, extremely intense, and I would not advise young coaster enthusiasts to ride this unless they truly insist on doing it. But once you get confident enough to ride this ride, even today, this thing still scares me. Whenever I'm sitting on that launch track by my own will, I'm still hecka scared whenever I am about to launch. That launch will take the breath out of you and then some. You can't even see going up of that big vertical tower onto the top hat because you're just blacking out almost. That launch is inhuman. You can't experience that many other places for that long. It's honestly incredible, and I really wish the Top Thrill is preserved for as long as humanly possible. This thing is excellent. Number 7 is Wicked Cyclone. I think this one definitely has taken a hit in overall quality due to a sluggish 2018 operating season, but from my memory of my 2016 visit for my first rides, this thing is excellent, and I want to give this for being the ideal compact RMC. All 3 laps around the old Cyclone structure is a masterful experience filled to the brim with a wide variety of airtime, laterals, inversion, and speed. This thing also, this thing does have a pacing issue, but I'll say that's actually a positive, because in order to do that third lap, this thing has to use up almost every single bit of its speed. And even when you're going seeming like a crawl, you're still pulling some intense negative G's going over those bunny hills. I think this thing is using its speed more or less to provide a long and satisfying ride instead of doing the 2-lap treatment like Goliath or Twisted Cyclone. And this is probably the single most re-rideable RMC I've ridden. Doesn't take much of a toll on your thighs, usually has a short queue, and the experience never gets stale. Even my second cousin, who was my ride to the park because he lives in the Boston area, said this is his favorite coaster, even though he's only ridden like 20. He's not a huge coaster enthusiast, but he knows that this one is quality above all else. And I agree with him. This thing is quality. Number 6 is Diamondback, the perfect B&M Hyper. A blissful combination of height, speed, length, and sweet floater airtime. Don't mind the utility vehicles in the background. I'm on a main drag in a dorm in university. These things are kind of quite common. Sorry about that. Bloopers. Carrying on, a front row on this ride will definitely send one careening over every single hill, there's a lot of them, with very, very strong floater airtime, and will never let up. And, my behind was in the air for pretty much the entire ride, the vast majority of the ride, which is pretty much everything I can ask for. I think that this thing does receive some crap for what its nearly non-existent vibration, just for the fact that it's not an intimate hyper. This thing is pretty much perfect for B&M hypers. All B&M hypers should strive to be like Diamondback. This thing has everything that a B&M hyper would ever need, and is my favorite ride at Kings Island. Heck, this thing can even give Orion a run for its money when Orion opens next spring. I would happily re-ride this thing multiple times per visit, because I remain one of the ride's biggest supporters. May not be the biggest fan, but I'm probably one of the biggest supporters of Diamondback. This thing is excellent. Keep on keeping on, Diamondback. Moving on, we have number 5, Iron Rattler. My first RMC. I went to Six Flags Fiesta Texas back in 2014. In May of 2014. Goliath didn't open until July of 2014 after a small fire broke out in the station. And this thing is critically underrated. I highly advise everyone to go to the beautiful city of San Antonio and ride this masterpiece, as well as the new Wonder Woman Golden Lasso coaster. And, oh my goodness, this thing is, excellent. I say that there are some flaws. The ride is rather short in length. There are some pacing issues once you get on top of the quarry wall after the first inversion. But I will contest that by saying that this ride is probably smoother than most B&Ms, as well as most other RMCs. It doesn't have the RMC trains with the obnoxious shin guards. You just have Gerslauers with very limited lap bars. And you have perhaps not one, but 2 of the most legendary drops in coasters. You have the massive twisted first drop going down the quarry wall, and then you have the drop off of the quarry wall after this thing chews up all of its speed, pops up into one massive drop, and you're gone. You are being flung out of your seat all the way down that drop into the tunnel, into the neon lit tunnel. I really wish I could just book a flight to San Antonio with a buddy of mine and just ride these things in peace. Moving on, we have Millennium Force, number 4. A coaster that was my original number 1 all the way back in 2013 when I started doing this list. This thing is now a humble 4th overall, and is my gold standard for my top 5, and will be the gatekeeper for coasters that are truly exceptional. Which, to this date, in 2018, there are only 4 coasters that reach the Millennium Force tier. In 2019, there are 5. The back row ride will cause you to gray out a few times, which, that's honestly surprising to some people. Millennium Force is a common dock on the ride. There is actually airtime on this thing, and this thing is a speed demon. You are traveling very fast, and it never lets up. This thing is definitely showing its age. It's It's turning 20 next year. 20. It's just as old as Raging Bull, essentially. And it definitely has a vibration as a result of being its age. But I want to say that this thing is an absolute icon in coaster culture. No one can deny the effect on the market this coaster had, and the fact that it remains probably one of the single most iconic coasters in all of American culture, if not world culture. This thing will be legendary for as long as it's around, and then long past its demise. I want to move on to number 3, Maverick. Behold, probably the biggest benefactor for my transition and preference to more intense rides. I first rode this thing in 2013, and it was excellent. I rode it again in 2015. It was excellent. 2016, even better. 2018, twice, even better. And this thing has surpassed Millennium Force for the first time in its career. This thing is masterful. I love this thing so much. The ride has an absolutely stellar pace. This thing will keep on chugging along, pulling tons and tons of positive G's in its low to the ground banked curves. The airtime moments, although few and far between, are among the strongest ejector moments I have ever felt. They will send your entire body into the sky, like you feel like you're about to go to space. And the thing as a whole tries to put your neck in two. Like, it will try and take your head clean off of your body. In a good way, of course. There's only a few times where you can actually say that trying to get decapitated by a roller coaster is actually a good thing. This ride is bonkers from the absolute beginning. And I really wish that this thing didn't have as long as queues as it does whenever I visit. Like, even in the fast lane, this thing can still pull 20, 30 minutes, if not even longer. And I really wish that I could ride this thing more and more. I want more coasters like this to exist in the United States. This thing is absolutely excellent and is the standard for intense, short, low-to-the-ground coasters. This thing is legendary, and I love this thing so much. Moving on, we have number 2, Fury 325. Last year, or 2016's number 1 has fallen. Kind of. It's number 2 out of 141 coasters that are rankable, 155 that are total, which is not bad in the slightest. This thing is known for one thing to me: the re-rideability. You will never, ever, ever get tired of riding this thing. Your body will collapse from the amount of forces before you even realize you're done with it, before you even want to stop riding it. This thing holds the record for the longest marathon in one visit at 11 near consecutive rides. Like, whenever I was bored at Carowinds, it was a very overcast, somewhat rainy day. I was like, let's go ride Fury. Yeah, I mean, this might be numbered 8. That's why I may ride number 8. But why? How could I resist? I mean, there's nothing else to do here. I've already done everything else at least once or twice. I mean, anyhow. I think the hype deserves... This ride deserves all the hype it gets, even though the next entry has definitely taken its thunder over the past couple years. And the speed, snappy transitions, overbanks, floater airtime, the drop, and that magnificent 90-degree stall, my personal favorite element, going under the bridge, is an absolutely amazing combination of elements. The operations of this thing are absolutely lightning fast, and this thing is essentially perfect. There is barely anything I change about the ride. I mean, could it be a bit more forceful in some places? Yeah. Could the airtime be a bit stronger? Yeah. But this thing alone justified a 14-hour minivan ride to Carowinds in 2016 alone. Like, much less anything else. If Carowinds was literally just Fury, I would still pay good money and then some to ride it over and over and over again. I love this thing. I can ride this thing 20, 30, 50, 100 times in a row and I would never get tired of it. This thing is absolutely excellent. And I think it definitely gives the number 1 coaster a run for its money. I hate to sound cliche, but my number 1 coaster is Steel Vengeance. I mean, I don't want to be another one of those Steel Vengeance yes men. I know this thing has developed a bit of a stigma in the coaster community for being the drone number 1 favorite. Like, I have my own opinion, and I think that Steel Vengeance is basically a perfect ride. This coaster embodies everything I look for. It has height, speed, drops, airtime, inversions, and an absolute mastercraft work of everything that I look forward to. The gap between this and Fury, like I said, is very small, only because they are such different ride experiences. Fury has grace, speed, and re-rideability all going among the elites in each respective category. Steel Vengeance is intense. It has breakneck pacing. The airtime is the most in the world, and you can obviously agree with that. Like, I don't understand how anyone could disagree with that. And this thing will beat you up. This thing is essentially the definition of pain is power. This thing is almost impossible to marathon. Even me, with my very large and beefy thighs, can't do more than 3 rides in a visit, or at least 3 rides in a half day. And it doesn't help that the queue is pretty awful in this thing. I also had the joys of riding it in May of 2018, when the trim brakes were off, and July of 2018, when the trim brakes were on. And I definitely prefer the ride with the trim brakes off, but the trim brakes on barely affects the coaster. This thing is a perfect symphony, a perfect storm of all the necessary forces and elements needed to make a roller coaster. And even among the ROCs, which is an absolutely elite manufacturer of roller coasters, this one stands above all else superior. And I'm not sure if human ingenuity can create such a fantastic ride ever again. Like, this thing is an absolutely legendary, a fable, a mythical tale on its own. It's like a unicorn. This thing is phenomenal. And what better place to have it at than Cedar Point, the happiest place on Earth. Epilogue? Yeah, I told you, this list has started a year ago. Maybe even over a year ago. Maybe 11 months. I know it started before the end of the 2018 year. And I have not only done my run of coasters at 8 more parks in 2019 to get another 20 plus coasters, but have also progressed as a person. Since starting this series, I've become a legal adult by turning 18. I have finished high school, and I have nearly finished my first semester at university. I'm about 4 weeks out from finishing my first semester at university. For all those that watch faithfully the whole way through, thank you. It means very much to me that people will willingly listen to me aimlessly throwing around my opinion voluntarily on the internet. And I also did hit another coaster enthusiast, as well as mixed with a personal milestone this past summer. I visited Holiday World this past August, which was fantastic enough. It took me only until recently to realize that Holiday World was my 25th park I'd ever visited, and I am currently sitting at exactly 25 parks. Barring, I think, roadside carnivals, which I don't really count. 25 brand name parks going from very large, very small, very, not shady, but still. And since 25 is my lucky number, my old channel suffix, and of course a quarter-way milestone, the first quarter-way milestone to get to 100, I will be creating a 5-part mini-series from now through late winter, to counting down all of my parks 5 at a time, from worst to best, going into great detail about my experiences, observations, and of course the rides they offer. Stay tuned. I will be bringing it to you eventually, because I got bigger things to worry about with my last month at university. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, feel free to leave a like, comment, or subscription. Have a great insert unit of time here. If you got finals coming up, good luck. I do too. And as always, I wish you guys peace.